Ready? All right. All right. Welcome. Yeah. I'm sorry, they didn't cue the sitcom applause like they said they were going to do. The cam. The cam.
That felt good. Thank
I know. All right. Welcome to the Inside the Actor Studio. My name is Brian Holcomb. I'm the curator at the Moss Arts Center. I want to welcome Craig to the stage to discuss his work in his current exhibition, First Act Scene 2, that opened yesterday in the Ruth Horton Gallery. And the exhibition will be on view until December 17th. Also, wanted to note that this exhibition runs concurrent with Steve Locke's The Daily Practice of Painting in the Sherwood Quinlan Gallery and the Miles Horton Jr. Gallery. And Steve's is consisting of a daily record of Locke's painting practice. Steve's exhibition features 114 small male portraits, and Locke's work engages ideas around masculinity, relationships among men, and how we ascribe meaning to portraiture. So I hope you check both of the exhibitions out. Craig, sitting here, he was born in Ohio and raised in central West Virginia. He currently lives and works in Atlanta, Georgia. He is a painter and a 2018 Guggenheim Fellow. He's exhibited in Nashville, Birmingham, and Atlanta, as well as New York City, Boston, and Los Angeles. He has been an artist in residence at Yaddo, MacDowell, at the Triangle Arts Foundation, and Skowhegan. And his work has been reviewed in Art in America, Artforum, and the New York Times and the Boston Globe. Craig served as the Dean of Skowhegan, and he currently teaches at Georgia State University and manages the End project space, which we could talk more about later. So thank you all for joining us today, and welcome, Craig.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you guys for coming. And again, this is the most posh venue I've ever been at, so thank you for inviting me, and this is pretty glorious. So have some good questions ready. That always makes it livelier.
Well, this is like a run-through for the next award presentation.
Oh, sir,
you
flatter me.
Yeah.
It's your best quality.
Yes. That is one of the characters, flattering lords.
Yes, yes.
So I just want to start off with, you built this body of work around one of Shakespeare's lesser-known plays, Timon of Athens. And would you just start off by giving us a short overview of the play?
Yes, I can happily do that. And I will say that, when I first heard about the play Timon of Athens, it was in a review, not of that play, but it was a review of summer theater in, I think, Central Park, Shakespeare in the Park. And the critic, it was probably Midsummer Night's Dream. That's usually what they haul out during that moment. Fine. No judgment. Fine. But the reviewer was saying things like, well, this was disappointing, that was disappointing, this person didn't perform, the sets were kind of shoddy, comma, but at least it wasn't Timon of Athens. And I thought, well, what's this? And so I looked into it, and I became fascinated by a location where poverty and greatness seemed like they were welded together, with the most recognized name in the Western canon being Shakespeare, and yet his most kind of, impoverished moment. And so that's a fascinating place for me to begin. And I like to begin these multi-year projects. I've been doing this for 14 years now, but I like to start with a found subject. Something that's already in the world that the audience will maybe have heard of but not really know anything about. And then I have heard of it, and then I learn about it, and it becomes a meeting place for me and the audience and everybody else. So that was why I picked it, having not read the play and having no real understanding of what the play was even about. And then when I did read it, it was, I mean, it's a bit of a grim scene. It's rarely performed. I know we have some theater folks in the audience who will know much more about it than I do, but it's, I mean, it's not really a hot take if I say it's a bit of a train wreck of a play. And even just you can't follow the script as written because there are characters who have name changes from like page 1 to page like 18. Like the thieves are now called the bandits, the banditti, and like characters who aren't introduced who suddenly say a line. You're like, wait a minute, how'd they get on stage, and so forth. So. By all accounts, it was a rough draft. Shakespeare never thought it was one of his works. 7 years after his death, the folio of 1623, ladies and gentlemen, that's when it first appeared because folks found it and they thought, oh, here's an unperformed play by Shakespeare. Certainly we can make some money from that. Probably other people, I mean, not probably, with certainty, other people also wrote into it. At least 2 people, maybe 4 to 6 more authors were in it. So it's just it's a mess. So by me selecting this play, it isn't that I'm a fan of it or I'm trying to recuperate its reputation. I picked it because it's the weakest spot in the strongest part of the Western canon, like the Shakespeare brand. So I'm a jackal and I saw the weakest zebra. And I've been eating it for 14 years. Beautiful analogy. I'm not going to walk that back. That was perfect.
Yeah. But this is the second time that you've taken a existing piece.
Right.
And like the previous one was the Supergirl movie starring Helen Slater. Which
Yes.
This series you worked on for 5.5 years?
Yes, and that was the first one. Maybe some folks relate to this, but maybe not. But I grew up in a small, very working class town in central West Virginia. I didn't know, nobody I knew had gone to college, and certainly no one had been to a gallery or museum. And so I was, as I sort of started making work, and I moved to New York City and started working in the museum and galleries there. Had a studio on 27th Street in Chelsea. And I never felt comfortable just making work out of whatever was in my head, because I feel like, looking back on it, I feel like I didn't think that my subjecthood was worthwhile. Like, I don't, hopefully that doesn't sound depressing, but that's where it was. So like, why would anybody be interested in what I would make? And so I found that that discomfort would be put into some abeyance, I guess, if I found a subject that already existed, so it didn't seem like it was totally about me. So it was maybe a little bit of an evasion somehow, or it was me managing psychological discomfort on some level. So when I found Supergirl, the movie, not the comic book, because I say that because the first shows I had, it's like, Craig Drennen, work about Supergirl. A lot of comic book folks showed up and had a lot of questions for me, and I was like, guys, spoiler alert, they were all guys. I said, I really don't know anything about comics. This is from the 1984 movie starring Helen Slater in the title role. And there was something about the Supergirl movie, which was, again, a successful franchise, but an absolute failure, that there was something about it that was kind of beautiful. And I mean, Peter O'Toole is in it, for God's sake, as Zoltar. It's really crazy. And Helen Slater was about my age. I think there's a year's difference between our age. Also gloriously, naturally blonde, both of us. And she got the part as a high school student. And the Salkin brothers, who did the Superman movies, said, "Oh, that was successful. Let's continue this money-making project by having Supergirl." And they did over 300 auditions, actresses all over the world, and they ended up picking this unknown high school kid. And so, you can imagine if you're Helen Slater, you're in high school, now you're the star of this most popular franchise, of the early 80s. And so I think looking back, a lot of the Supergirl project was just like rationalizing like hope and obscurity and all of the things that we hope for as creative people, and how we don't know like how it's going to turn out. Like we don't know when the luck is going to come our way. And so Helen Slater, it was such a failure that she doesn't put it on her CV now. She's trying to like distance herself from it, although she did make a guest appearance on the Supergirl series that came much, much later after all of this. And you know, to make my task even more difficult, I watched the movie once, and I said, that's enough. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to limit myself to the information I get on the VHS or the DVD case. The VHS. So people came in saying, hey, where's pictures of like, you know, a cute young person in a tight-fitting uniform? And I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm writing Helen Slater as Supergirl on notebook paper and then painting it. So, and there's Helen Slater as Supergirl front, near and far, as if the paper is close to you and as if it's far away. I know you guys are smart. You have high SAT averages here at Virginia Tech, so I don't have to over-explain things. And then I flip the same paper over and say, Helen Slater as Supergirl back, near and far. And so I did, you know, this allowed me like a way of working, and I did it for 5.5 years, and I tended to work in the front and back, and I sort of whatever I was doing. And so I liked that because it was sort of foregrounded the idea of a simple investigation, just like a little kid, like a toddler level, like, hey, what's on the back of that? Oh, nothing. What was on the front? Maybe that's nothing too. And so, so that was how it started. And it's me also just learning to paint. You know, I did have a painting degree, and God bless all my previous instructors. They were very encouraging. But when I went to undergrad, I did go to a school in central West Virginia, a state school in West Virginia, and a lot of my professors, you know, they went to school in the 70s, and so it wasn't about technical instruction. It was about sort of encouraging creativity, and so I never received that kind of deep and panoramic technical instruction. So there's a lot I didn't know about painting. So part of it is me also just learning how to paint and using this Supergirl project. And I like that me and Helen Slater were about the same age, and so I could treat her as my surrogate self-portrait, you know, and even Supergirl, like super powerful, but girl is like slightly diminished, you know, somewhat. Like they're not like Superwoman or just, you know, super person. It's like, so there's something in the language I was also exploring in the early stages here about like what you would call you know, some of the theory people would call a weak sign, you know, where it's like it has a sign of strength, but then it's deflated. You know, so Supergirl, you know, Timon of Athens as the follow up after that. But yes, this was, to answer your question, this was the first part, and it was the first long multi-year project I did, and I felt very much at home. I did a lot of audio pieces where I would recite Helen Slater's lines, only her lines. And I wish I had a recording of that so you could all.
Yeah.
So I'll send an MP3 to all of you, so you can play that in your car.
Yeah.
But
I'll play it during the next talk.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
So it's like
good.
Yeah.
But I in reciting her lines, I realized that it's not super. Like her lines were all like, "Excuse me, sir. Oh, thank you. Oh, pardon me." And I was like, wow, this is, I don't know who wrote this script, but this is not a powerful kind of, you know, super person. So even that like was a very interesting learning experience for me. So I did audio pieces, sculpture, drawing and painting. I mean, and again, in every case, I'm just learning how to do it. You know, and I got a teaching job. I'm teaching full time and just trying to kind of manage all aspects of life and start a career at what that time was coastal Georgia. You know, I had left New York. I got sort of chewed up and spit out, you know, by the New York art world. I was there 7.5 years, but then I landed in coastal Georgia, far away from everything, and I was like, all right, let's how can you start from here? Like, how can you begin a practice, and you know, with whatever ambitions you might have for your work. and then do that in a place where nobody's paying attention. You know, how do you do it?
Well, I want to ask you about, you mentioned it too, and this painting kind of shows it, the reversal,
Right.
like aspect into, and how you've talked about intervention into the history, one with taking these lesser known works
Right.
and projecting yourself in because it gave you space,
Right.
but also just the whole act of inversions, which like brings us back to like the Timon and you approaching different themes throughout art history, and one that's been repeated a lot is like how photography like killed painting, and your first instances in the earliest works in the Timon of Athens was the Polaroid back.
Right.
And what sparked this decision? I know,
Oh, there
I
it is.
surprised you, I snuck
Yes.
up on you. Just know it's there.
Yes. Well, I will say that, you know, in starting, you know, I did the Supergirl project, and I learned a tremendous amount. And then I decided to shut it down. There are things that I wish I had maybe done differently, but I didn't learn it until like year 3 or year 4 of you know, of the Supergirl project. I mean, for one, I limited my palette to only the colors in her costume. And so it was like red, yellow, and blue, which it turns out are also the primary colors, so that wasn't really a radical, you know. There was nothing surprising about that to the audience. So anyway, so I shut down the Supergirl project, and I thought with Timon of Athens, I liked that it was that it wasn't. I mean, Supergirl was kitsch adjacent, which I was fine with, but I like that with Shakespeare, suddenly it seemed classy and canonical. And it seemed like a different, you know, sort of a different monument to kind of, you know, lean toward, a bigger windmill, you know, to point toward. And so I like that. And then you know, I really, I mean, I think like a painter, but I also ask a lot of questions about painting. And one of the questions is like, why didn't photography kill it? Like, it seems like maybe it should have. One thing I like about painting, it's so simple. And many times when I'm working in the studio, whatever thoughts I'm trying to have, it will come crashing down to the physical fact that I'm holding a stick with hair on the end of it. You know, it's like, this is a brush, and this is the simplest possible tool. Like, what am I doing? Like, the absurdity of it, like, sinks in and comes crashing back. And then after that, joy. And I was like, oh yeah, this is absurd. But you know, so I think about all of that, and I think about the conditions of painting. And what I like about painting is its simplicity. And I don't say this lightly at the tail end of a pandemic, but I think that painting behaves sort of like a virus, because every new thing that comes out that's supposed to kill it only makes it stronger. And so photography was invented, and folks thought, oh, that's the end, that's it. 1839, it's over. There's no more painting after Daguerre. But turns out painting absorbed that, because painting is not complicated. It's very simple, just like a virus is simple. It needs a host. So to me, like, learning more about painting and studying the ontological questions that painting asks, like, what does it take for something to be a painting? What does it take for it to be a good painting? Like, these questions are all kind of obsessive for me. And so I thought, well, what if I have Polaroids here? Because I like Polaroids as an invention, because just as an invention, it really was one of the most radical, innovative, egalitarian inventions in the history of picture making since linear perspective. And then you turn the Polaroid over, and you have the black monochrome, the abstraction of Malevich and the early modernism. You have like the modernist endgame on the back of a Polaroid, and you have the wide open lens-based revolution that's coming on the front of the Polaroid. So the Polaroid itself is like, I think they're amazing. Like, I love them. And I buy just boxes of Polaroids on eBay. Like, they're not expensive. Like, it's like, you know, one box of random Polaroids for $5 or whatever, which is what I did for the pieces you see out in the show. But, and this is the part that's funny. I mean, I could have just glued a Polaroid to the front of the painting, like a lot of folks would do that. I have no problem with collage, and I'm not ideologically opposed to it, but being not successful for a long period of your adulthood, even into your middle years, being not successful for a long time will lead you to have no faith in the current age. And so I thought, well, if I glue a Polaroid on, I mean, even the best adhesive might last maybe 15, 20 years. Then I'll have to have conservation. And I thought, all right, I don't want to depend on people conserving the adhesive every 15 or 20 years. So if I just paint it, if I learn how to paint a Polaroid so it looks like a Polaroid, has the effect of the Polaroid, at the scale, the exact size of a Polaroid, then it will last longer, and the piece will last longer into a future generation that will finally love me. Simple as that. You're saying, wait a minute, Drennen, are you saying your work is about a desperate need for love?
Yes. ...
Yeah,
I think that's every artist.
well, that's what he said. But that's why, so I thought, okay, I have to learn how to depict things with absolute accuracy. Mm-hmm. And so that was where it come from. I wasn't super interested in that kind of trompe-l'oeil virtuosity per se, but I realized that it was going to be useful. Mm-hmm. And part of these long-term projects, it allows me to be greedy. So because I like all styles of painting, basically. Mm-hmm. And so it allows me to cast a big net and pull it all in, and to work in abstraction and in decorative pattern painting and monochrome and representation of different types and so forth, and I get to have it all. You know, so again, like that doesn't come from like a noble urge. I think it's just greed. Like I want all of it, you know. And so this, I developed the skill that I needed to have. You know, I developed the technique. I didn't enter any of these pieces knowing how to do the thing that I want to accomplish, so I have to learn every single time how to do it, which means I'm always uncomfortable, and I'm always feeling like I don't know if I can do this or not, and then I ease my way to the finish line, and it's like, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Well, the other thing that I like about this is what you were saying earlier of how like painting absorbs all the things that tried to kill it.
Sure.
And this was a way of you interjecting yourself into like photography.
Yep.
And conceptual art, or as you mentioned before, like performance art with you
Totally.
reading the Helen Slater lines. So this show is kind of different, and I mean, first I want to start, you know, with like how you work yourself through all the characters, and then the follow-up would be this being 14 years.
Yep.
Like the previous shows that I've seen have really like focused on one character, which depending on the time or ideas around that character differs. So could you start by like telling more about how you progress through a character? Yeah. How do you know it's done? How you would jump to the next one?
I mean, that's a good question, and my answer is never satisfying to people because, again, when I was in grad school in the early '90s, and in the seminar rooms of the MFA programs of the world, the top of the hierarchy was conceptual art, conceptual-based practice. Like that was the international style, the only thing that was going to lead to the promised land. But I never really believed that. And so some people sometimes give me far more credit for being a conceptual artist than I deserve, because I don't actually believe in any of that. I believe in intuition. And so with every character, even like figuring out which one am I going to start with, I just intuitively picked. I mean, the first character was the mistresses, then flattering lords. And then I started going through the characters list. And for each character, the number of pieces I make is also intuitive. Mm-hmm. And this is the point where, you know, sometimes when I give an artist talk somewhere, this is where they start like pelting me with their rhetoric. But I believe in intuition because I think that intuition is the #1 survival tool for children and marginalized people. So if you have no cultural power, everyone around you is stronger, more economically powerful, physically powerful than you, the only way you're going to survive is intuition. And I always use, the example, that kid that gets off a bus after school and nobody's there to pick them up, they have to find their own way home and like make their own dinner and all that. Those kids are surviving due to intuition. And that's why I trust it, because I think our intuition wants us to survive. Mm-hmm. And I think that my intuition wants me to survive. And so I am fine letting that lead the way. And so that determines which character's next, how many pieces, what the signifiers are, like what image, or even if it's abstraction, like what method I'm going to use for each character is arrived at intuitively. I do practice it. Intuition doesn't, it's not magic. Like, you have to work every day and be dedicated to your practice, and I draw every day. I have a sketchbook that I work in every day. And I brought it with me on this trip, and I feel weird when it's not around me, but I know where it is. So I always have to know where my sketchbook is, or I sort of lose it. So please don't steal my sketchbook. If you want to say, hey, how can I undermine Drennen and make him go insane quickly, steal his sketchbook, and he will lose his mind. Mm-hmm. But that's how I made the decision, because I didn't know that at first. Like, it wasn't a truth held self-evident. That's from someone else from Virginia. That I would go through the list of characters, but to me that seemed like a method, because I liked looking down the list of characters' names in the play, and I said, all right, what I'm going to do is I'll make something different for each character, with thinking ahead that then if I have a show, any of the characters can be on stage with each other again. And I like that. And sometimes there's a collision, because and I am each one of them. Like, I understand that. Sometimes my shows look like a group show sometimes, and that's been very off-putting to the commercial gallery world sometimes. They're like, Drennen, what are you doing? You're killing us. Just do one thing so we can, like, what do they call it? Form a brand? But that's not, that's not why I'm in the game. But I like this idea. And I don't want to leapfrog ahead, because maybe this is a question coming, but by chance, in 2004, I met an acting coach in Los Angeles. My first time I showed in Los Angeles, of course, I met an acting coach at the opening. And she was great, and she was actually in a movie with Helen Slater, So and she came up to me, and it was, I showed some Supergirl pieces, and she came up to me, this acting coach, and she was like kind of astonished, and she's like, you know Helen? I was like, no. Do you? And she's like, yeah. We were in Legend of Billie Jean together, which is actually a great movie. You should watch it tonight. And so she was like, her experience was like, this is so unbelievably weird. Why is this guy like doing all this work about Helen Slater? But he's not like obsessed with her face, so maybe I'm not a stalker, which I'm not. And so I gave like an exhibition catalog of the Supergirl work to this person. I was like, well, if you see Helen Slater, like, show her this. And I did get a note back from Helen Slater's people, which was, good luck with everything. We don't want to be involved. Like, God bless, good luck, which is fine. Like, that's totally fine. But I say this because even Supergirl is a movie. Like, there was something about performance and acting that was in my head for reasons I don't even know why. Timon of Athens, of course, is a play. And so I started to, the skill acquisition and the delivery method for each character, I really learned a lot. This acting coach took me under her wing. She had no reason to do that, but she taught me. I went to her place in LA, and she's like, all right, have you heard of Stanislavski? Here's how we begin. And so I learned like intro to method acting from this person, and she makes a lot of money in Hollywood. Whenever you see a singer, rapper in a movie, she trained them. Her specialty is taking the talented non-actor and turning them into a competent actor. I chose my word carefully, competent. But I say that, and this isn't the diversion it seems to be, but I say that because I learned, and she said to me, she's like, when you're painting, every time you hold the brush, you're accessing a place on an emotional spectrum, you're accessing muscle memory, all the thing the actors in the room already know. But this was news to me, and I was like, oh, you're right. She's like, here's how you get out of that. Here's how you increase the emotional range that you can hit. And again, that is like, I'm sure the acting students here do that remarkably well, but for me, this was like the sun rising in the east. I was like, what? And so I began using, with the Timon of Athens pieces, I use painting as a form of acting. And so when you see multiple different techniques used in a room, I'm treating it just like I have like a one-person show, which I'm not going to do tonight. But it's as if I have a one-person show with like 4 different characters, 4 different backstories, 4 different accents, each one done perfectly. That's how I see my painting exhibitions. You know, so it's not that I'm hiding or that I'm evading scrutiny. It's as if I want to be kind of seamlessly inhabiting and just disappearing into each character. Some of the characters are funny, some of the characters are a little mean, some are pensive, some are sad, some are overly complicated. You know, each one has its own different spot that I like to hit or try to hit on the emotional, spectrum. So that's my very long answer to your question, but that's how the characters get built.
Mm-hmm. And this show is the second in the series of the first acts, being Scene 2 is the clue, and
yes,
and these are combining multiple characters.
Yeah.
So you're approaching it, as you said, like a revival.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Yes, late last year, I was approached by a place in Atlanta, the Atlanta Contemporary, which is a non-collecting museum, and they were approaching their 50-year anniversary, and I had been a resident artist. They have a residency program, Atlanta Contemporary, for a studio residency, and I had been in their residency program for 3 years back early on. And they said, we're approaching our 50th anniversary. We'd like to have, we'd like to showcase some of our previous studio artists, and you want a prize or two that we'd like to include that under the canopy of Atlanta Contemporary as well. So maybe let's start thinking about a show. And they have a policy where they hire a different curator for every show, so which is also kind of interesting, that the authorial voice of the institution is constantly shifting because the curators are constantly shifting. So I found a curator who was willing to take on this project, and Atlanta Contemporary and the curator both said, let's look at the first pieces you did when you started Timon of Athens. Let's go back to the beginning, and and see what was there, and see how predictive the works were. But let's just look at it, because that really hadn't been shown. And so that was why the first act was like the first things Drennen did out of the gate. And then how are we going to combine these characters? And so with Atlanta Contemporary, we had one combination that the curator, who was Bridget Mulholland, who I can't say enough good things about. Like she took on the project, she did all of her curatorial duties, and she did it like her father passed away in the middle of it, and she still like showed up. And I told her, I was like, you don't have to do this, like this is too much. But she was like, no, I fulfill my obligations, and it's good for me to do it. So we did all of that, and it was the first time that the multiple characters, like this many characters, were put together, because, and I think it's just time. Like when I first started, like the first year in, every time I tried to show my work to people, I got what's the acronym? WTF? They're like, what are you doing? You're like, what? Like Shakespeare? But I don't see any Shakespeare in this. And I was like, no, you're right. But here's this, I'm doing something else. And so it was, early on, it was really hard to kind of lead, like just communicate to people what was happening. Now after 14 years, it has accumulated, and now I think it kind of makes, sense, sort of, or the learning curve is a little easier. Not that there is one, because I rely on people just getting that physical experience of the work is plenty for me. Like, you don't have to know the backstory. It's totally fine. But I think I'm now at a place where curators are now looking at it and saying, which is what, I have to say, I knew Brian back in Atlanta and had a show at the gallery he used that he founded and used to manage called Saltworks. And Brian was always really good at laying out the shows. And so, for this show as well, Brian had some ideas about, let's change a few things, let's do this, slightly differently. And I think it all worked out, elegantly, and I think, shows the work to the best advantage. But I think now I'm in kind of a new phase where people are saying, it's like I have characters that people can play with now, like curators especially. It's malleable. Like, people are starting to see, like, aha, like there's things that can happen here that Drennen hasn't thought of, which is true. Like, there's always. It's why whenever I have a show somewhere, I immediately defer to whoever the curator or the director of the place is, because they always have ideas that I didn't think of that turn out being way better than what I would have thought of. And sometimes other artists are like, Drennen, like, don't you want to, like, fight for your rights? And I was like, when you're around very smart people, let them do their job, and it always makes me look better. So yes, so I'm always, every curator, every director of a gallery space or a museum, I'm very interested in hearing what they have to say, because they always find a new angle that is interesting.
Yeah, and before Craig gives me too much credit, I am also one of those curators that said WTF when he first showed me the Supergirl series, and it was probably, 5 years after that?
Oh, things marinate. They marinate.
Maybe something like that.
For the appropriate time.
And it wasn't because of Craig stalking me and calling me up, like Helen. And but it was just, I saw the work evolve, and sometimes it takes the curator time.
Oh, totally.
It's especially when it's something new.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah. And I understand all of that. And I, again, like I understand, like that first blush, people are like, what? And maybe even here, people are super polite, so nobody said that last night exactly. But I understand it. Like, it's not strange. And when I'm making the work, again, I have all of this mechanism in my brain. I spend a lot of time in my own head, like thinking of these characters and what they might be and what the next one's going to be. But nobody needs to know that. Like, whenever, I really believe in people just experiencing the work with no, prior knowledge. If the work can't survive in that, then it's not going to survive. Like, it's not. And I really think that there's an old line that the painter and critic Fairfield Porter used to say, where, like, a work of art is sort of like a person. We respond to them like people. If it's sexy and interesting, then we want to learn more. If it's not, if it's boring or mean or aloof or impossible, then we don't. And you will learn more about the work that is seductive to you. And I'm fine with that, because that's how I do it too. Like, when you walk into the Louvre, hopefully, I did it much later in life than most artists my age, but if you walk into the Louvre, you look left, there's a big history painting that says the surrender of Cornwallis. You're like, oh, I know exactly what that is. You guys probably do. Okay, whatever. Bad example, but I didn't. And I look to the right, it's like, the coronation of Sesostris. And I'm like, oh, what? So we normally look at art in a state of very limited knowledge, where we're relying on our eyes. And we're again, if it's seductive, we will follow and learn more. If it's not, we won't. And I support that. I support that way of making art and looking at art. So I'm never, ever one to say, like, oh, don't look at my show, read Timon of Athens first. Like, in fact, that's a horrible idea. I would not torture people like that, because I think just look at it, and if anything's there, then then you can always learn more, you can always come back to it. But I'm a big believer in just letting the piece do its work if it's going to survive. The great filmmaker Jack Smith, hopefully you look at some of his videos. He never had commercial success, was always an underground kind of artist kind of person, but he would say that just like the stock market, like the art world, eventually will correct itself, and the good will eventually force its way into whatever it's going to be. It's going to find its audience, because just like iron filings being attracted to a magnet, the iron filings can't help it. They're pulled toward the magnet. And I think every work of art is a magnet like that. It will find what's attracted to it and pull it towards it, given time. And so time is, as I enter my middle years, I'm starting to think, well, maybe time is my enemy, but I know that it's not, and so, even though I made an enormous T filled with clocks ticking down in the lobby, or down in the gallery as we speak, I sort of trust the work, and I trust people, and I think that the audience is going to come at the speed that's natural to them. So these stories, it's totally fine, whatever time it takes. I've always had a small but very loyal following, which I'm very appreciative of. It's remarkable that I've had that. And then if it gets a little bigger, that's fine too,
So you mentioned time. Besides the labor that it takes and everything, but also of how there's always these life events that get absorbed by the paintings themselves, and how do you use autobiographical elements in your paintings? How much are they because I've heard you mention that this is going towards an investigation towards self-portraiture.
Well, that's a good question, and that's only recently come out. The first characters, I will say, mistresses, the maskers, who don't even have speaking roles in the play, or old Athenian, and so forth. Some of the early characters were, I was thinking, we always have these thoughts, what we think is happening in our life, but I was thinking, this is about criticality. This is about me sort of undermining the Western canon, haha. Then I realized, maybe there was a drop of that, but the more I worked, the more I realized it was actually more about me and my anxieties and my, what faults, or what I was trying to correct, or what I was kind of trying to use the work to massage within my own sort of, mind and personality. And in that, the farther along the characters came, and it was pointed out to me, it's then they start to suddenly, they don't have that same kind of critical sharpness maybe, but there's something else that was coming in, and it turned out that it was more and more autobiographical elements were sneaking in, and I didn't realize it, into where the character I'm working on now, the merchants, are all circular. Oh, there it is. Oh yeah, there's some. They're all circular, and there's a character in the play called Merchant, a very minor character. But I remember as a little kid in the 70s, bless you. Who was that? Was that Eric Stanley? Wow. He's allergic to virtuosity. All right. I was thinking of, character of Merchant, and I was like, all right, and again, I'm drawing in the sketchbook, I'm going through page after page of just Merchant. What would it be? What would be interesting? I'm waiting for something to emerge. And I remember being a little kid in the 70s, and every Saturday, go with my mom to the laundromat, because it's a small town, and again, in working class town, not everybody had washer and dryer, especially back then. And so we go to the laundromat, and I'm sure that it was not an enjoyable experience for her, but I loved it. Because I'm there, I get to hang out with Mom, it's all sloshy and warm and cool. Warm, by temperature, cool, just because you're hanging out, you're hanging out with the grown-ups. And she would give me 4 quarters, and I could play whatever I wanted. There was a jukebox in this laundromat, and you could play whatever I wanted. And I thought I waited all week for it. And then I would actually memorize because, again, for whatever reason, I had a very good memory. And so I found that I could memorize the songs on the jukebox, starting with ABBA, ending with Warren Zevon. A lot of stuff in between. And so as a little kid, I would put the quarter in, and I thought it was great how a quarter is a circle. You put it in, and then you see the record pop out, which is a different kind of circle. And I remember just being like, oh, there's the universe in action. And then it would play my song, and I would like it. And I knew that there were songs that my mom liked, and so I would, 3 of them would be for me, and then I would give her one. I'd give her Tanya Tucker, Delta Dawn, or whatever. She liked that one. But me, I would, it was like Jackson 5, and it's ABBA, and it's like, Sly and the Family Stone, or whatever. And so I use the circular shape for the painting to reference coins. And then the coins reminded me of records, which are also circular. So these records, I painted them, which again, I have like jeweler's glasses doing the song list with like a 1-hair brush. It's grueling and unpleasant, but I don't want them to seem that way. I don't want them to seem overworked. You'll notice the shadow under the pink record that's right there, which is Le Freak, by the way, by Chic. I put shadows on some of these because when I would show images to people, they would just say, oh, we're not really interested in showing collage. And I was like, oh, it's not collaged, you fool. I worked hard to paint that. And so I thought if I put a shadow under it, that'll tell people it can't be collage. It can't be glued down and pretending to float. And so that was my plan. It didn't work. People still say, oh, collage, who cares? Especially in Atlanta, where there's a lot of found object artists, a lot of assemblage and collage art. That would even be like the #1 style of work. And then I'm over here at my studio doing these like fake collage. But this, again, it's very autobiographical. It's about me and my mom and these songs that I remember and these records and the experience. There's money in it as well. I floated some money around. There's a dollar bill floating in there. And it was brought to my attention, the editor of Art Papers magazine, Sarah Higgins, I have to give her credit. She came to do a studio visit. We're just hanging out in the studio. And I was telling her the story and all of this, and she's like, oh yeah, I totally get that. Because these are like looking through the front, like a front-loading washer, where it's like sudsy, and there's like a dollar bill that got loose that was in your pocket, and like all. And it was so obvious. Again, like other people are able to see like more than we are a lot of the times. But I also am a firm believer that and I say this to everybody, like the work can be smarter than you. Like the work can be leading you places. And that's why, again, the intuition, I trust it, because I feel like it knows more than I do, and so I have to kind of follow it. And so this is where these are landing. And the Timon button, that is not invented. That's a real thing in the world that was discovered by Mr. Brian Holcomb. Yeah. He found some of these in a thrift shop or something.
In Christiansburg.
Apparently there's a political candidate named Timon who had these buttons made.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was like, oh, this is part of the Shakespeare play.
It's like Drennen's everywhere.
How did Shakespeare make buttons about these characters?
That's right. That's right. But, and I was happy to put that in, because there's another character in the play called Certain Senators. Like, they don't even have names. They're just like Certain Senators. And I have a separate character called Certain Senators that are all the buttons around the McGovern campaign, the 1972 McGovern campaign. Yeah. McGovern, who, by the way, ran against Richard Nixon and had an astonishing electoral loss. But I remember it because I was a first grader, and that we had like a mock election. That's why there are McGovern buttons, or one McGovern button up there. And I remember as a first grader, like, casting my vote, and I thought I had figured it out. I was like, oh, McGovern's going to win because he has govern in his name. And I was so filled with delight, I could barely walk up to the front of the class and put my little slip of paper in the cardboard box. And I said, oh, I did it. No one knows but me. I figured it out. And then in our class and in in America, McGovern lost like brutally, like at that time, the biggest electoral loss in history until someone named Michael Dukakis came along. But anyway, so there is a separate character called Certain Senators where there's a lot of McGovern buttons that I also buy on eBay. So if you see Polaroids or McGovern campaign buttons on eBay, don't buy them, because chances are I'm already bidding on them. So please don't interrupt my flow as I'm trying to make the work. But again, these more recent characters, I never would have allowed characters to blend together in the early days. They all had hard boundaries. Mistresses are here, flattering lords are here, the maskers are here. Now it suddenly doesn't, it seems fine for them to marble together somewhat. And I can't explain what's different about it other than, I mean, I'm sure my doctors say, well, Drennen, you're a more well-adjusted human being now. Not as compartmentalized as they kept telling me. And so maybe it's that, but I'm happy with this sort of blending together. And you know, these were all made during pandemic. And so that dot pattern on the circle, originally, when I first said, you know, merchant, I thought, all right, I'm remembering the coins, but I am holed up in my house because of COVID. And that those early illustrations of the COVID virus, remember what those looked like? It was like that little cartoon that didn't seem dangerous. It was a little too cartoony, actually. Like it had no sense of danger. It was just like a little like alien ball with dots on it and spike proteins that were made comical. And so I used that. I used the COVID virus as my sort of compositional device. I got like some plastic plexiglass balls, and I just put stickers on it and then photographed it. And that's how I start. That's how I get the composition around the circles. That's why it seems like they seem three-dimensional, like there's a front and then a back of the sphere, because there actually was. So yeah, I even forgot the question, but I'm sure I answered it beautifully.
You were, because you were talking about your life. And
the autobiography.
How you put how it's all about you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and then I actually went to the Christiansburg store looking for McGovern buttons, which there are a lot of. So just to let you know, and then that's where I found the timing. But at this point, I would like to open it up to questions to the audience. If anybody has a question for Craig, he's even not about his work.
Yeah, I'll answer anything. Oh yeah, question, front row.
Yeah, so I was just curious, because I feel like sometimes as an artist, your mindset towards success can make or break you.
Yep.
So I was just curious, like, how would you as an artist measure success?
Oh boy, that's a great question. See, I knew you guys were smart. All right. I will say that, I mean, when I think of my artistic heroes, or just any of my heroes, it was always people who could make something out of nothing. Like those are I grew up playing basketball and being a high jumper, so I love like track and basketball. And so all those, my favorite sports stars were the people where like they started with nothing. Like the odds were against them, nobody was helping them. It seems like they just came up out of the ground, you know? And and artistically, those are the artists I always really like. And so for me, that's connected to my idea of success. And so for me, success was being able to continue doing the work. Like that really was it. I've had students, I've taught a lot of, I worked in museums and galleries. I've had so many kind of jobs. I've been a custodian, I've been an elevator operator, I've been a drywall installer. You know, I have so many different types of jobs because I had to in my life. Like I could never not be working. And so, you know, that is part of it as well. Like the idea of like, okay, I just need a day job to pay the bills so I can continue just making the work. And that was like the biggest part of it, just being able to continue, you know? And I have students who've had tremendous success and have become, I don't want to out any of them, but they become even, I would say, like affluent. They become like really successful. Sometimes when, you know, in the past, one of my first students to get some success, this fellow who I adore, Michael Skowhegan, like really great guy. And I knew sort of that that he seemed like he was doing well. He was living off his work, and it's like everything is great. And then I went to his apartment in New York, and I was like, oh, he's doing very well. But great. I mean, and other people too. Summer Wheat, one of my students. We got Eric Stanley right here, believe it or not, was one of my old students. But he's doing well in spite of that. Yeah, I tried my best to hold him back, but it didn't work. But I think that's an interesting point, because especially, in this kind of Instagram saturated moment where there's a lot of talk about being on brand and the hustle and just, the endless kind of like market awareness, I guess. I haven't sold a huge amount. Like, and I'm 56 years old, and like in the last 18 months, I've done okay in terms of sales. Like all that prior time, not okay. So I couldn't put success based on like, on that as the indicator. So for me, it was just about making the work and just finding, somebody who would be willing to show it, And I always tell, I tell people, young artists, when they ask, you don't need like 100 people to love you. You just need like maybe 2, like 1 curator and 1 gallery director. And if you got a critic, if that's a 3rd one, you're fine. and friends and partners, spouses, all that.
Yeah. Which, it's one of the reasons why I paired Steve Locke and Craig Drennen together, because they've been friends since 2006. They actually met up at Skowhegan, and both of them been very supportive of each other, even during these like different times. And I don't take offense, but I did sell your show very well.
Sorry, that's right.
Show.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that was a high point.
But that was 1 month out of. And as you know, you like to get a paycheck more than 1 month out of every 10 years.
That's true.
So,
no, it's very true. It's very true.
It helps.
It was to me, that was a high water mark that lasted a long time.
That's right. And I'm very happy to be eclipsed now.
No, it's all good. Oh, how awkward. No.
Next question.
But that actually, it's good, because as a young person, you're always trying to like gauge, like, could you want to, if you have some ambitions, you want to do well. And this is why in conversation, I write some art criticism, art writing, I don't know, art writing I would call it, more than art criticism. And I wish I had time to do more, because I really do like it. But one of the things I always like to talk about is talent. And that word has been banished a lot from the art world. You won't see it much in art magazines. You'll hardly hear it in academia, to be honest, because it feels like kind of a, don't say that. Don't say anything about talent. But I love talking about talent, and the reason is because talent is random. Like, talent pops up. It can pop up anywhere. It can pop up in a poor person. It can pop up in any kind of marginalized person. Suddenly, like, it can pop up in a refugee. It's like the most talented person in their whole town. And on the other side, people with tremendous affluence and ease in their life, talent may not appear. And that's why I love it, because it is random, and that's why I think it's dangerous, and that's why it's been banished, is because, we can't predict talent. Let's go somewhere else, because, it's a little wild. And I think as an artist, and I'm going to go back to your success question, because I think that was actually a very important, excellent question. Everybody's going to have some kind of talent in there, and I think of talent, I really think of it as a wild animal that I'm trying to domesticate, because I want it to do stuff. Those first people that saw a horse, and they thought, oh, look at that crazy thing. Like, that looks strong. Like, maybe that could be helpful to us, raising our crops. And so I think of talent that way. Like, and some folks, they never learn how to, tame their talent. It like comes and goes. It's unpredictable. It does what it wants and ignores them. And the people who I think enter into some kind of success are the people that say, okay, talent, you and me got to get along. I'm going to give you plenty of room to breathe, and I'm going to feed you, and you're going to do things for me. And you're going to do it, not when you feel like it. You're going to do it every day when I need you. And I really do think of talent as like kind of separate from me, but I'm constantly trying to get it to do more for me. Because on paper, here's a kid born, very young parents, super working class. I mean, by most people in America's standard, it would be struggling even. Like neither of my grandparents had running water. Like in 1986, when Michael Jackson's Thriller was the #1 album in America, neither of my grandparents had running water. America had done 2 successful space shuttle flights in America. And this again, I have the power of the United States and the weakness of my hometown, like simultaneously. Strong, weak. Again, Timon of Athens. Strength, and the opposite of strength. And so all of that comes together, and on paper, there was no reason why I should have been talented. And I say that because, this is being recorded, I hope. In the first grade, I was in the era, one of the first times when there was widespread standardized testing, and I did really well on standardized tests. I did so well that the school became kind of suspicious. It's like, this can't be our #1 student. He cannot have gotten a 99.9. And it was all just because of like class. They're like, it can't be like the factory worker's kid. But it was. And so there's like, oh, can you do it again? And the next one's like, oh yeah, he did. And so on. And so that's why I think like it's important to recognize that, because I was someone who wasn't supposed to have talent on paper. It wasn't supposed to be there, but it was. And I try to develop it, and that's been the thing I train that, to use the analogy again, I train that horse like a little better every year, and it does a little more for me and pulls me a little further. So I think for me, like that's been the only pathway to success has been trying to, figure out how to develop my talent, how to build it, how to let it breathe, how to let it grow, and how to let it do more for me. And I encourage all of you folks to do the same, because again, that's the part, that's the wildness, talent, because it is unpredictable. Fran Lebowitz, the writer, even says that. I don't know why I said even. Why wouldn't she say it? She's very bright. She's written like 40 books. Okay, we'll take that out in post. Let's go to a clip.
Does anybody else have any questions for Craig?
They're like, no, let us out of here. Oh, is there one in the back? Okay.
The candor is great. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you occupy icon symbols and indexes in your work, and if there is a pattern to that, or if it just happens.
Well, all right. I feel like this is one of those moments, if I were in Australia, this is a moment where I threw a boomerang and then forgot about it, and it came around years later and hit me. Because I feel like we talked about this in class way back in the day. In semiotics, and I don't lean hard into this, but you guys already know that, I could draw a picture reasonably well of a tombstone, let's say. I'll use that example. And I would say, hey, look, everybody, I went to a graveyard. And they're like, did he? Or I could write the word tombstone. And I was like, look, I wrote this word that I was really at a graveyard. And they're like, was he? Or I could take a piece of paper and do a rubbing from an actual grave and then show it to you and say, I went to a graveyard. And you're like, oh yeah, he did. There it is. And so those 3 different examples I showed you were, different references, different signs, different types of signs. An icon being a representation of a tombstone, a symbol being like the language, the letters that spell out the word tombstone in English, and then an index being a physical trace. So the physical trace always feels like it's closer to authenticity and authority, which is what photography used to have. And that's why photography has that feeling of the real, because it used to be indexical. It's not anymore. And this is my whole point of why painting is powerful as a creative method, because photography, think of Photoshop and think what's happened in film. You know, all the Marvel movies started as drawings. Because, yeah, you want somebody to fly, you want them to, like, web to shoot out of their wrist inexplicably. Sure, you can make that happen. If you're going to film it, it was impossible up until very recently, because they're like, oh, there's no way to do that, until photography and film became, they got rid of their indexical part and said, you know, let's be like painting, where if you can imagine something, you can make it visible. Like, that's what painting could always do, drawing and painting. If you can imagine it, you can make it visible. And so I think that those boundaries between which is better, a picture of something, a language about something, or a physical trace of something, I feel like those used to be hard categories, but those are all blurred now. And that's why I paint a fake shadow. I paint a symbol, like a representation of a shadow, to try to get you to think that the record is real, that it's a real, and the drips that are a real physical trace are never real drips. Like in my studio, I splatter out on tracing paper and plastic all kind of different shapes and drips, and I use them as my references. So the drips are actually, the things that look indexical are actually representational depictions of a drip, and the things that you think are anyway. But I don't get on my hind legs about that, because I think those boundaries are so porous that nobody can tell what's what. Which you guys know that. When you look at Instagram, like, it's like, you know that 1% of it is real. You know, that's not shocking, but it's fine. You're telling a story, like storytellers have always done. You're dissatisfied with my answer, Eric Stanley.
Yeah. I will have to add that Craig wrote a grant to go to London to the Shakespeare Globe and
Yes.
do rubbings and stuff. So I remember that
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And then he painted those rubbings.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is a true story. The first national grant I ever won was Art Matters grant. And I said in my proposal, I want to go to the Globe Theater, because I'd never been there, and I want to do rubbings of the exterior of the Globe Theater. And in the process, and they said, what do they call it? What does Zizek say? A weak yes? They're like, okay, question mark? But they did give me the amount I asked for. So I flew to the Globe Theater. I asked permissions to take a rubbing. I had done my research, and I knew the original Globe Theater burned to the ground, the replacement burned to the ground, and the one that I was actually doing the rubbing of was made in 1996.
Yeah.
So it was no more authentic than a TGI Fridays, you know? But that was fine, because it was a rubbing from the Globe Theater. So I typed my tracing paper, and all the unemployed actors who were working there would come out and smoke their cigarettes. It's like, what are you doing? That's perfect British accent, by the way. And then I would say, oh, I'm doing this, it's for art. And they're like, all right, okay. They were like curious, but not enough to like spend more than 1 minute. But so I did my rubbings it rained a lot, so it took like 4 days to like get enough. I folded them all back up, brought them to the US, had them scanned, projected them, and then immediately started carefully painting all of the rubbings that I had taken. So that shows you how little I honor the boundary between all the different types of signification. Be glad they rebuilt the Globe Theater. It now has excellent plumbing, and it now has HVAC. It has a quiet AC system. So be thankful that you're not there, urinating right on the ground like some of the old timers had to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can do that, but you don't have to now. It's a choice.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful period for this.
And scene.
And scene. Thank you all for coming today.
Thanks, everybody. Truly.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you have more questions, Craig Drennen on Instagram. Like, usually people will DM me, some later fans, like, that thing you said, that sounded stupid. Like, will you explain it? And I was like, I will. I always will. All right, but thanks, everybody. Truly.
Thank you. Great, man.